In a bold and polarizing move, former President Donald Trump has officially declared the loosely organized anti-fascist movement known as Antifa a domestic terrorist organization through an executive order signed on Monday. But here's where it gets controversial. Legal experts argue the president lacks the statutory authority to make such a designation, raising questions about the practical implications of this sweeping claim. So, what does this mean for Antifa? And how does it fit into the broader landscape of U.S. counterterrorism law? Let's break it down. The executive order instructs Trump administration officials to investigate and disrupt what they describe as illegal operations allegedly tied to Antifa members. It also targets individuals who fund or provide material support to these activities. However, the White House has not presented concrete evidence linking Antifa to specific crimes, a point critics say undermines the credibility of the entire initiative. The move follows the assassination of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk last week, though authorities have not confirmed any connection between the killing and left-wing groups. Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is not a centralized organization, but rather a decentralized network of activists with diverse ideologies, ranging from socialism to anarchism. As the Congressional Research Service noted in a 2020 report, the movement lacks a unified leadership structure or shared doctrine. This raises a critical question. How can a government label a diffuse, ideology-driven movement as a terrorist organization when it doesn't even exist as a formal entity? And this is the part most people miss. The U.S. has no federal law granting the president the power to designate domestic groups as terrorist organizations. Unlike foreign terror groups, which are governed by clear legal frameworks, domestic terrorism remains a murky legal gray area. The White House's fact sheet defending the decision cites recent incidents, including attacks on pro-Trump events and law enforcement. For example, it references the 2020 Portland protests, where a self-identified Antifa member was killed after opening fire on police. However, many of these cases remain under investigation, and no conclusive evidence has tied them to a coordinated Antifa effort. The administration also highlights the Kirk assassination as part of a trend of radical left violence, despite the suspect, Tyler Robinson, having no known ties to Antifa or other extremist groups. This selective framing has sparked accusations of political weaponization. Legal scholars like Luke Baumgartner of George Washington University's Program on Extremism warn that the executive order may face constitutional challenges. "You can't prosecute an ideology," he told CBS News, noting that while states have their own domestic terrorism statutes, federal law lacks a clear pathway for criminalizing such labels. This creates a paradox. Even if the administration succeeds in branding Antifa as a terrorist group, it wouldn't automatically lead to arrests or convictions. The real impact might lie in shifting federal law enforcement priorities, potentially funneling resources toward investigating Antifa-related activities. Historically, Antifa's roots trace back to the 1980s, when grassroots activists opposed neo-Nazi and KKK gatherings. The term gained prominence in 2017 during the Charlottesville clashes, where far-right groups faced fierce resistance. Yet, as University of Pittsburgh professor Michael Kenny explains, there's tremendous variation inside that movement. Even on issues like political violence, some members advocate for nonviolence, while others embrace militant tactics. This internal diversity further complicates any attempt to categorize Antifa as a monolithic threat. Trump's push isn't new. In 2020, he similarly threatened to label Antifa a terrorist group, but failed to follow through. Now, with his second-term agenda in motion, the move appears aimed at galvanizing his base while fueling cultural war narratives. But does this align with national security priorities, or is it a political stunt? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Is designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization a legitimate step toward public safety, or a dangerous overreach that muddies the lines of free speech and activism? Share your perspective below.